Hello and welcome to this Saturday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We're your Steelers reporters here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And we are here in Dublin, Ireland before the Steelers take on the Vikings in Dublin, Ireland. It's going to be an exciting matchup. We'll get into all those matchups here. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel and brought to you by Edgar Snyder and Associates, who also do workers' compensation. When you've been hard on the job, who decides when you're better? Who decides when your treatment's over? And who decides when your benefits are over? The answer might surprise you. It's always the insurance company's doctors. They won't be on your side. So get someone who will be on your side. That's Edgar Snyder and Associates. Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, we're out here and it's interesting the vibes that are going on in Dublin right now because I've gotten mixed senses from the Steelers with the way that they've talked about it. Aaron Rodgers was like, I would have loved to be here earlier in the week because he loves Guinness and he wants to do things, he wants to see things. DK Metcalf says, I don't really care to see the sights. I'm here to win a football game. He's like, the most I'll see is when we're flying out from the plane and we're on the bus to the game. And I think I hear Aaron Rodgers because personally, I'm enjoying the sights of Dublin. I went to the Guinness Storehouse; it was wonderful. But I also get that it's a business trip for these guys. What has been the vibes from you? You've been to the practices, Brian. What's been the vibes that you've gotten from this team and how they're handling coming in on Friday and jumping right into practicing?
Yeah, Chris, I mean, they've only had one practice as the time of us recording this because they arrived Friday morning, flew overnight Thursday into Friday, basically got to their facility, which is 40 minutes or so from the city center of Dublin. But I mean, it's a five-star hotel. Nobody's feeling bad for the Steelers staying at the Carton House. But yeah, they pretty much, dropped their bags, changed into their stuff, and rolled out to practice. So I think on one hand, yeah, you've got Aaron Rodgers bringing the 41-year-old perspective of the sightseeing would be nice and having a little bit of extra time in this city because, to be honest, he's probably never going to play another international game in his NFL career. Would have been cool. But I think you go back to the 2013 last time the Steelers went across the pond, played the Vikings, ironically, or just coincidentally. But, players complained not so much about not getting to see Big Ben and the changing of the guard, but Big Ben himself and Big Cam Heyward, who's still on the team, really kind of have taken great pains to say that week was rough. The travel was rough. The practice wasn't good. They were falling asleep in meetings. They didn't feel like they were prepared and truly ready to hit the ground running Sunday and play a football game. So it does have a competitive advantage angle to this as well. But Art Rooney, the second team president, said it was a football decision to do most of their football things at the Southside facility during the week because that's where you've got your weight room, that's where you've got your meeting rooms, all your film stuff, and then pack everybody up, travel to Ireland, and try to just squeeze those last couple of days of prep into your time over here.
It's interesting because there's also the historical context of the Steelers' first ever Super Bowl win was against the Vikings, and one of the storylines that often gets talked about by Mean Joe Green and the guys that played on those teams was that when they got to New Orleans and they got all the stuff out of their system that like the first night of hitting all the sites in New Orleans, and that allowed them to settle into the week. Now, granted, different situation. You're in the U.S. You're not changing time zones. You're doing it there, but it makes me wonder: is that something that can hinder the Steelers? I remember people talking about how LaMar Woodley was like falling asleep at the podium. Talking about guys falling asleep in their meetings. They couldn't even stay awake when talking to the media, and so it does make me wonder if this could impact the game at all because the Steelers, are a team like a lot of these, and not just the Steelers, most NFL teams, they're teams of habit. They're teams that that base themselves, and it's part of the physicality of football, right? You build yourself up so much so that you can take punishment on Sunday, recover on Monday and Tuesday, and then ramp up again to take that punishment again throughout the rest of the week. And it takes kind of a hit when you're then adjusting it and you're going across the seas and you're going to do something at a different time. You're doing it at 9:30 instead of 1 o'clock and your body's resetting. It's not something that's easy on the body, and it's something that does make you wonder what could be the impact of this game. Currently, FanDuel has the odds right now at the Vikings being 2.5 point favorites, the Steelers 2.5 point underdogs. The Steelers are technically the home team in this matchup. Granted, it's international setup. The money line is that has the Steelers at plus 124, the Vikings at minus 146, with the game's over under set at 40.5 points. Not a lot of points being expected to score here. Brian, we've both been in Dublin for a little bit now. I've seen a ton of Steelers fans, but I've also seen a good representation of Vikings fans and even talked to quite a few of them. It's been an interesting experience seeing all the people that came across the pond to seek to root for their team either way.
Well, yeah, I mean, to to your point there and to what we were talking about at the top of the show, there's two teams playing in this game. It's not just the Steelers taking on, a bunch of football players from Dublin who have been here training and preparing for this game. The Vikings had to make this trip across the Atlantic Ocean as well, and they were on the same travel schedule. So, I mean, that if that does affect the game, it would just be one team prepared better. Maybe they got more sleep collectively on the plane than the other. So I don't know if it's going to be like it was in 2013 when I'm pretty sure the Vikings were over here, over in London earlier. And there was also, kind of notably a few years ago, the Ravens played the Titans in London,
Mm,
and John Harbaugh made it a point to get out there Monday or Tuesday, I think, and spend the whole week acclimating to the time zone. And they blew out the Titans, but maybe that's just because they were a lot better than the Titans. We'll never know. So yeah, both teams are dealing with the same challenges. Um, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I do think the Steelers will have more of a home field advantage, but I think it's going to kind of feel like a bowl game where one team's
right.
fan base travels a little better than the others. Maybe it'll be like trying to think of an example here, like Notre Dame against UCLA in a bowl game or something.
Yeah.
You expect the
That's
Fighting Irish fans to be out there more than the Bruins fans, but maybe I'm actually selling Skull Nation short on that one.
Yeah, there's when I was in the Gravity Bar in the top of the store, the Guinness Storehouse, was with some Vikings fans who tried to do the skull, and like no one really took to it, and it was kind of funny. It was like two guys trying it, and it just didn't go anywhere. Um, but the Vikings also have the benefit of they're here for like 2 weeks. They play next
Yeah,
week's game in Dublin as well, or actually no, in
in
London.
London. Yeah.
They're in Europe for back to back weeks, so like they get the benefit of being out here and adjusting to this and kind of just doing that. And both England and Ireland in the same time zone. So this could also just be like they're like, hey, you know what? We're gonna get used to it because we're gonna be here the whole time. Whereas the Steelers have this in a bye week.
Yeah, I wonder if mentally there's anything there. It's kind of like, all right, one team is, hey, we're get in, get out, like DK Metcalf said. Um, you know, all due respect to Ireland, like, no, I'm locked in. So I wonder if he was just cooped up in the room last night, reading or playing video games or whatever they might have brought over here. Whereas are the Vikings kind of like, whew, this is going to be a long stay. We're settling in. Yes, we have a game to play Sunday, but man, this is just the beginning of quite the trek for them. So yeah, I think there is a difference on the back end between these two teams. And if you want to look ahead and get the early FanDuel line on Vikings Browns for Week 5, whereas the Vikings will have been nice and adjusted to the time zone over here. Maybe they should be huge favorites over Cleveland, but maybe they would be anyway.
Maybe they would be. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to dive more into the actual matchup of Steelers Vikings. The Vikings getting back a key player in Jordan Addison. The Steelers getting back a key player in Deshaun Elliott. Will they get back other guys? We'll talk about all the injury reports and the matchups here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko, stick with us. Be right back. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko here talking all things Steelers, getting you ready for Steelers Vikings this weekend. Today's episode is also brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you having trouble finding the right people to hire? Tired of sorting through endless resumes? Well, the future of hiring looks much brighter because ZipRecruiter's latest tools and features help speed up finding the right people for the role that you need. So you save valuable time, and now you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. With ZipRecruiter's new advances, you can easily find and connect with qualified candidates in minutes. 4 to 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate within the first day. And if you go to ZipRecruiter.com/audio right now, you can try it for free. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. We also want to thank our friends at Goldberg, Persky, and White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, the firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit GPW Law for a free consultation. All right, Brian, let's talk about Steelers-Vikings here. The Vikings, of course, as I said before, getting back Jordan Addison, former Pitt wide receiver Blitnikoff winner. He'd been serving a suspension. He's excited to be back. He said he's been clicking with Carson Wentz in practice already. But the Steelers got some good news themselves. Deshaun Elliott, who's been missing since week 1, he's set to be back, and they have 3 guys questionable here. What's your outlook for the other guys who might be able to play this weekend? Joey Porter Jr., Jalen Warren, and Jonnu Smith.
I don't have a good feeling about Joey Porter Jr. I mean, those soft tissue injuries, I haven't broken it all down, but I think generally you miss 3 games, and that's kind of how long it takes to be safe with it. Now, obviously, they're all different, but it's a long season, and they certainly don't want to risk that getting worse for Joey Porter Jr. We've seen that in years past with Alex Highsmith, and you try to come back too early. Even Cam Heyward, I mean, that's happened to him too. So you really need to be cautious with that. I think they hold him out another game. Jalen Warren and Jonnu Smith, I mean, I wasn't at practice on the South Side Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday, I believe they were added to the injury report. I think these are 2 guys who, they run with the ball after the catch so much. They're taking some hits. They're banging knees. They're probably going to be okay, but you got to manage it during the week. And remember, I mean, all 3 of these guys are questionable. Joey Porter Jr., maybe he's a true questionable, but in the old NFL reporting, Jalen Warren and Jonnu Smith could be probable for all we know. Jonnu Smith talked to us after practice, which that's not the be-all, end-all, but you know how it is, Chris. Generally, if the guy's feeling good, like I'm going to play, I don't have to go immediately get treatment and I'm up against it, going to be working until the 11th hour to get ready for this game, then they're probably not going to do the interviews after practice. So Jalen Warren, I don't know if he spoke to any media members, but it's Jalen Warren. I mean, he's tough as nails. I think they're both going to be out there.
I think that's a good sign for the Steelers. Warren has arguably been the best player from scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball, at least maybe the most consistent. Jonnu Smith, if they can work the ball to the tight ends, I feel like that would be a big part of the matchup in this game offensively. Is you look at this Vikings team, I think they have decent players in the secondary. Isaiah Rodgers just logged the greatest game ever according to PFF. 2 touchdowns that he scored, 3 forced turnovers on his part. But man, I look at the size mismatches here that the Steelers could have with DK Metcalf, Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth, and Jonnu Smith. This could be an opportunity for Aaron Rodgers, if he gets time, because they do have a good pass rush in Minnesota, to be able to use those size mismatches to his advantage and see, especially if they can get into the red zone. And the Steelers have been the second best red zone offense in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers played very well there. That might be a way to get this offense going and keep the Vikings defense maybe at a disadvantage at different spots.
Yeah, I mean, this Vikings defense, I think they're, at least on the back end, maybe a little more predicated their success on the scheme and Brian Flores dialing up blitzes and pressures that hurt an opposing offense than it is truly the talent from guys like Byron Murphy. I think he's fine. Isaiah Rodgers, I think he had a really good game where the splash plays were crazy, but I don't know that I think of him as being particularly sticky in coverage or anything like that. And Harrison Smith he's kind of the Aaron Rodgers of defensive backs, man. He's getting up there in age. I was talking to one Vikings fan the other day who, of course, doesn't like Aaron Rodgers, but she loves Harrison Smith. And she pointed out to me this is going to be the 22nd time they've faced each other.
That's wild.
She's right on that. And Harrison Smith is number 22. So she insists that means he's going to have a huge game. Maybe pick off Rodgers. We'll see. But, yeah, I mean, I think regardless of who you play and the relative strengths and weaknesses of an opposing defense, the Steelers need to get these tight ends more involved because, good things have happened when they've targeted Jonnu Smith. Pat Freiermuth is still kind of waiting for that 2025 breakthrough game. And we've seen that teams are going to try to take away DK Metcalf. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can only survive and sustain on the dump offs and getting Jalen Warren in space for so long before you need to get the chunks elsewhere through the air.
Flipping it over to the defense, the Steelers defense has been ranked 29th this year to start the year in third down defense. They haven't been getting off the field. They talked about it this week, but they're facing a team right now that's 28th in third down offense. And granted, JJ McCarthy was a quarterback for 2 weeks. Carson Wentz was the quarterback last week against the Bengals. But even against the Bengals' really bad defense, they only converted 33% of their third downs. I see this as a week where the Steelers can reset some things, and they were better last week at forcing third and longs, just not stopping third and longs. Is this a week where you think that you start to see that turn in the other direction, or do you think that that continues against an offense that is loaded with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, one of the best 1-2 wide receiver punches, but also T.J. Hockenson, a very talented pass catching tight end, and Jordan Mason, who's been very productive out of the running back position?
Yeah, I think it's a tough challenge for the Steelers, and particularly the secondary. Talked with former Steelers center Mason Cole yesterday about kind of the offensive line and defensive line matchups between these two teams, and I think the Steelers will they'll be able to get some pressure. I think the Vikings have good offensive linemen, but they're banged up at a couple spots, and their receivers though they are going to stress this Steelers secondary because Jordan Addison. Yes, I guess he has to get back up to game speed, but he's coming off of a suspension where someone
He's
like
not
Deshaun
hurt.
Elliott's coming off of an injury. Yeah, so
Right.
he's also going to have to be back up to game speed. And Jordan Addison runs such sharp routes. We've seen the Steelers get beat on some really sharp routes thus
And he's
far in the
great
first 3
hands.
weeks. Yeah, they're going to have to be on it. The Jalen Ramsey, Justin Jefferson matchup is fascinating to me, but so far, Chris, through 3 games of this new look, reshuffled Steelers defense and secondary, we haven't seen Jalen Ramsey be Jalen Ramsey as far as tailing a receiver, being in
Right.
shadow coverage against a true number one. So, if there were ever a time to try to turn over that stone, I guess it would be against Justin Jefferson, but I'm still not
Mm.
convinced that that's the Steelers' plan or vision for this secondary, at least not yet while you're winning.
And also they're going up against a good offensive line. Brian O'Neill, another former Pitt man, playing
Yeah.
at right tackle. Christian Darrisaw, one of the better left tackles in the NFL. That's going to be a key matchup for T.J. Watt
But
and
his
Nick
game last
Herbig.
week was his first back from injury too. He was out for a really long time with a major knee injury last season, so he shook the rust off last week.
Mhm.
But now Nick Herbig is going to be throwing 99 per hour fastballs at him for 60 minutes, and we'll see what happens there. Also on the injury front, Chris, Vikings outside linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel, another
Mm.
pass rusher from Wisconsin, is out for this game. So he had 2 sacks and 8 snaps last week against the Bengals, and
That should be a
um,
99.9 PFF ranking right there.
yeah, absolutely. But now I guess he's a little banged up after that game, so they're going to hold him out for this one.
Makes sense. That'll be interesting to see how Troy Faltano and Broderick Jones handle this game. But let's get to our predictions here. Steelers, Vikings again. FanDuel gives you the odds of 2.5 point favorites are the Vikings in this matchup. Brian, how do you see this playing out? What's your X factor and what's your final score?
Yeah, I can see this one going either way. Much like Steelers
Same.
Patriots last week, I said it was a coin flip, and I think that was a razor thin coin flip kind of game. The way that it played out, a Cam Heyward fingernail on a ball kind of game.
Yep.
Great hustle by him, but there was some, in my mind, fluky things that happened in that one. So I'm not fully on board with the Carson Wentz renaissance just yet, the Wentz-assance. I need to see more. I'm not against it, but weirdly, I was always picking against Sam Darnold last year, but it wasn't because of a lack of belief in the Vikings coaching staff. I think they're really good at what they do, and Wentz might have actually some more impressive physical traits in a way than Darnold. But I got to see more to believe it, and I just think the amount that the importance of this game has been drilled into the Steelers this week. You hate to say like a team's going to play harder because of something like that, because you always want to win every game in the NFL, and you don't want to be 2-2, and you want to have a chance to gain ground on the Ravens, push the Ravens even further away. Gain
Yeah.
ground. You don't have to catch up to them, but distance yourself from the Ravens, I should say. But I think the way that the Steelers are so tuned up to try to win this game for the Rooney family, being out here in Ireland, first NFL regular season game, if there was ever some cosmic forces at work in their favor, I think this would be it. So I'm going to go Steelers 21 Vikings 20.
21-20. I like that. 21-21. I like this matchup. I agree. It's going to be razor thin. I think it's going to be back and forth between these two teams. I do think the under hits. I think it's going to be. Or wait, will the under hit in this situation? No, the under wouldn't hit in my situation. It's 40.5. So I'm hitting the over here. I'm going to go 26.
Yeah, I said 41 because I know Vegas is good at what they do, Chris.
Yes, that was right on the money on your part. I'm going 26-19. I think the Steelers pulled this one out, but it's going to be weird. Chris Boswell field goals everywhere. I think this is going to be a game where some odd stuff happens, but I do think that part of what I'm looking for to happen here is the Steelers pass rush really picked up last week. I think that they continue to pick it up this week and they clean up a little bit of things on third downs, and that gives them just enough more stops in this game to control the pace. Aaron Rodgers does just enough in the red zone, and the Steelers escape here. And I say escape because it's not gonna look like a dominant win. Granted, neither of the Steelers' wins have looked dominant this year, but it's going to be just enough to get them to the bye at 3-1. And then they would put pressure on the Ravens because the Ravens play the Chiefs. And granted, I think the Ravens are going to win that game, but the Ravens don't. They'll be 1-3, and the Steelers will be 3-1 going into their bye. And granted, the Ravens have played 3 really tough games to start the season, but man, that would be a really that'd not be an ideal hole for the Ravens. So if the Steelers put them in the hole, that would be a good way to start your way, go into the bye week, get some guys back healthy, and look out for the rest of your season.
Yeah, the Ravens have played a tough schedule, but who knows? Maybe the Seattle Seahawks are going to be Super Bowl contenders by week 8 at this rate. So, yeah, maybe that loss won't look as bad. But no, in all seriousness, we've said all along, Chris, when the schedule came out in May, Steelers needed to make a hay, excuse me, in the early part of the season.
Yeah. Absolutely. He's Brian Batko. I'm Chris Carter. This is the North Shore Drive podcast. Thanks again for tuning in on this wonderful Saturday. We hope that you enjoy your Saturday and your Sunday. We'll have the coverage here. Jerry Dulac and Brian Batko will be at the stadium doing their thing in Dublin.
And Jason Mackey.
And Jason Mackey. Thank you for reminding me about that. Stay tuned for all our coverage at post-gazette.com and all the post-game coverage that'll come here. We'll see you here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.